If you go to just about any wrestling website or YouTube channel or anything like that, you will sooner or later find an article about the greatest wrestlers to never win a world championship. Owen Hart was one, Jerry the King Lawler was another. Your cup runneth over with this. But since they, and by they I mean we, have milked that particular cow for all that it is worth, it got us to thinking, for all the people who've never won the big one, there must surely be some wrestlers who only ever won the big one. We had a root around in the back of our heads and we thought there must be one, and after a few hours of thinking, we found out there was 9. Yes, that is our job. Alright, so before we start, a few ground rules with this one. If you have won any championship in WWE, that disqualifies you from this list. Yes, even the Hardcore Championship and 24/7 Championships, though they have been passed around like your girlfriend in the first year of university, they count and rule you out. But conversely, Royal Rumble wins, King of the Rings, and Money in the Bank briefcases, they do not, because they're not officially titles. So without any further ado, my name is Adam Cleary, and these are 9 wrestlers who only ever won World Championships. Number 9, Vince McMahon. As of the year of our Lord 2019, Vince McMahon has been in WWF and WWF and WWE for 50 years, and in that time he has been listed as an active member of the roster, and in that time he has won precisely 2 championships. In 2007 he somehow pinned Bobby Lashley to become the ECW champion, and on a 1999 episode of SmackDown he pinned Triple H to become the WWF champion. I'm really sorry. He held on to the ECW title before giving it back to Lashley some 35 days later, and his run with the top belt lasted for 4 days before he gracefully relinquished the belt. They both happened. They count. Now you may sit there and think, my God, how self-centered, booking yourself to win 2 of the top prizes your company has ever held. But what am I going to do? Stand here and tell you I wouldn't do exactly the same thing? I am still What Culture's Twitch champion from 2017. Number 8, Buddy Rogers. Alright, so we can start the list properly here. These are like the legit guys and the legit reigns, and just, we'll forget the Vince thing. In 1963, Buddy Rogers was officially crowned the first ever WWF champion after a tournament in Rio de Janeiro had established who was the greatest wrestler in the world, and thus they had been awarded with that prize, except there was no such tournament. Long story short, Vince McMahon and promoter Toots Mondt, which I swear is his actual real name, had just decided that they wanted their champion to be seen as having some kind of prestige, as being a global star, so they just made up that there was a tournament and gave him the belt. Now, sadly, this reign didn't last too long because the 42-year-old had some heart conditions that impacted his in-ring work, and Vince was forced to get him to drop the belt not long after giving it to him in the first place. Now, they didn't want to bury the guy because he was their champion at the time, but they had the idea to squash him in 46 seconds to young up-and-comer, and you might have heard this name, Bruno Sammartino. Rogers, sadly, was just never in a condition to contest the top belt again, and even died in 1982 as a result of those cardiovascular problems, which means he had one run with one belt, and it was the big one. Number 7, Stan Stasiak. No, not Meat, the man who originally invented the term transitional champion. He took the belt off Pedro Morales in the 70s, which was a huge shock to everyone in attendance, but the biggest shock of all to Stasiak himself. Story goes that even though Morales had been champion for something like 3 years at this point, they told Stasiak he was going to be getting the belt pretty much on his way through the curtain. Now, was this going to be some star-making performance, some giant push for him? No, he was just going to take a belly-to-back suplex, and Morales would accidentally have his own shoulders down for the 3 count. Still though, I mean, hey, you're not going to complain. You get to be WWF champion, and they keep putting these champions on a massive long run, so surely you're going to have it for a while. And no, the condition was he could have the belt so long as he would drop it again to Bruno Sammartino 9 days later. Basically, Morales was a big face, Sammartino was a big face, and they didn't want to have one beat the other for the title, so they needed Stasiak in the middle to transition the belt, hence the term. Number 6, Ivan Koloff. Now, when we went to New York earlier this year, and yes, I will shut up about it, eventually we were told by locals that the only time the garden is quiet is when it's empty. But if that is true, the only time it was nearly quiet was when Ivan Koloff beat Bruno Sammartino for the WWF title. WWF title. www.wwf.com title. Now, and stop me if you've heard parts of this story, before he rushed out of the building fearing there would be a riot, at this shock title change, but fans didn't have to be angry for long, because just 3 weeks later, he was to drop the belt again to Pedro Morales. You see how this is all lining up now. Now, if you recall me saying STASIAK was arguably the reason for the term transitional champion, I say arguably because obviously KOLOFF existed as well. They wanted the belts to change hands between Morales and San Martino, but still did not want one to beat the other to do it. So STASIAK and KOLOFF, they both did that, and neither of them ever got anywhere near the top belt again. So there you go, they get on the list. Number 5, Psycho Sid. Psycho Sid, Sid Vicious, Big Meanie, Sid Boy, Sid-O-Mac, whatever the hell you want to call him. Sid down and shut up. He only held 2 titles in WWE, and they were both the WWF. You know, it really is irritating that they changed the name of that company twice, and you've got to yes, after Shawn lived his dream, or he did his dream, or whatever the hell he called it, by beating Bret Hart at WrestleMania to realize his dream that he's living and having of winning the WWF Championship, he then had to drop that to Sid about 230 odd days later. Now, Sid, by the standards of this list, went on a tear. He had it for 2 months and defended it successfully once before dropping it back to Shawn Michaels at the Royal Rumble. And then after Michaels went on hiatus to find his smile and live his smile and smile his dream all over his face, Sid got the belt back by beating Bret Hart the day after he just won it, but then he only had it for another month on top of that before losing it yet again. So that's 2 title reigns, the better part of 3 months, and trust me, as this list goes on, you will find that impressive. Number 4, the Great KHALI. Now, he gets a lot of stick, but just look at the Great KHALI when he first debuted in WWE and imagine what Vince McMahon's just big, leg-rubbing, like vein-popping, eye-gouging thingy reaction would have been. I've taken that too far. 7'1", 400+ pounds. He captured the World Heavyweight Championship not long into his time on SmackDown. He won that big 20-man Battle Royal thing, which was designed to disguise how bad he was in the ring, but even then, was sort of noticed. And the thing is, back then, he wasn't seen as the joke that he was later on in his career, but still, fans absolutely fucking hated this title run. It's not that he wasn't a good heel, because I mean, like, look at him, that is genuinely scary. It's just that, as I say, he could not wrestle at that level to save his life, and wrestling fans tend to like to watch their wrestlers wrestle at some point. And WWE, in their infinite wisdom, gave us this grueling 61-day title reign with 2 successful pay-per-view defenses before letting Batista spinebuster him to take it off him, because obviously couldn't get him up for a Batista bomb, though I would have liked to seen that. But the bottom line here is that this experiment with KHALI was met with such outright derision by the fan base that they never ever again trusted him with any title whatsoever. So here he is on this list. Number 3, Sergeant Slaughter. Yeah, honestly, the rest of this list is now what? No way they only won the big one, and yes, no way Sergeant Slaughter only ever won the big one. His only title in his entire time in WWE/WWF/WWE whatever is the big one. It's the WWF Championship. He never, and I can't believe this, he never ever had a run with a hardcore title back when Crash Holly was getting pinned off like Patterson and Briscoe. Not once. But surely had to be tag team champion at some point or intercontinental champion at some point. Nada, nothing. Only ever held the WWF Championship and only ever held it that once. Thing was, when he won it, right, it was in 1991 at the Royal Rumble and he got that lovely winged belt off the Ultimate Warrior and everyone was like, wow, okay, they're gonna, wow, Sergeant Slaughter's gonna get a run with the belt. And then, of course, Hogan won the Rumble later that night and we're all like, yeah, alright, see what they're doing here. 64 days he lasted between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, and he never reclaimed it and never won anything else, and at the time of me recording this, they still haven't put the 24/7 title on him. So, there you go. Number 2, Superstar Billy Graham. The man of the hour, the man with all the power, too sweet to be sour. Superstar Billy Graham was somehow having his entire shtick written for him by What Culture's very own Andy Murray 10 years before he was even born. And I mean, let's have a look at that, shall we? A charismatic performer who was talented in the ring and looked like that. You can see again why Vince McMahon would have been rubbing his legs and popping his veins, and I'm not going to do that bit again, but you can see why he liked him. He'd be an obvious choice for the top belt in Vince's head, wouldn't he? And so it proved in 1977 when he dethroned Bruno Sammartino for the WWF Championship. WWF Championship. I don't know what it was at that point. And the thing is, despite him being a heel, they just could not take that belt off him because he was so weirdly popular. He was such a draw, and they went all around the world, all these different arenas, put him against all these different opponents, and for 9.5 months, he would retain the thing. But being a heel, they knew eventually they had to get it off him onto a more popular up-and-coming babyface, and when Bob Backlund first appeared, that's what they did with it. And he didn't take it well. Basically quite upset by the loss, despite being one of the biggest draws in the entire company. Graham just took his ball, presume he had a ball, and went home with it. And he never really wrestled for the company in any significant capacity ever again. Yes, he returned for a few cups of coffee, but never anything where they were going to put a belt back on him, and that remains his one and only piece of gold. Silver, gold, silverware, goldware, title belt. Number 1, Brock Lesnar. Now, quick little fun fact for you. I originally recorded this before SmackDown, and then we lost all the stuff on the card, so I'm having to do it again. But I would like to say I absolutely categorically predicted that Brock Lesnar would be taking the belt off Kofi Kingston in about the length of time of a heartbeat. You have to take my word for it, but it did. To date, Brock Lesnar has won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 championships, I think, in WWE, and they have all been the very top prizes. Now, you might look at him now and think, well, duh, Adam, it's Brock Lesnar. How could you ever book him as anything other than a top champion? But even during his initial run, before he'd really established himself, 2002, 2004, would it have been beyond the realms of possibility to give him a tag team title or a United States title or an Intercontinental title? No, it wouldn't, which is why it's quite surprised me it did. I was like, ooh. But no, in the mind of Vince McMahon, even back then, it was impossible to imagine him as doing anything other than moving to and dominating at the very top of the card. And even when he goes away and he comes back, he's immediately put back into that part of the programming. Like, he comes back and he beats John Cena, he comes back and he beats Roman Reigns, he comes back and he beats Goldberg, he comes back and he beats Seth Rollins. He always has the thing on his shoulder because that's just what Brock Lesnar does. My script here says that he is scheduled to challenge Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship on SmackDown's debut episode on Fox. I can't remember when I wrote this one, so I've done some quick maths, and there was 5 years in between him last losing that belt and him reclaiming it in October 2019. Well done, Brock. Well done, I guess. And you know what it is? The thing that gets me about this is think about the criticisms that get leveled at Cena and Reigns for being like Vince's favorite and always in the main event and pushed beyond their abilities and all of this. They have between them a litany of other championships, tag teams, Intercontinentals, United States, the lot. Brock, no, never. He can only ever be a world champion. That is his job. So there you go, everybody. Let us know what you made of this in the comments below, and please cross your fingers that in the time between me recording this and it eventually going out, Sergeant Slaughter doesn't randomly end up with the 24/7 championship. And hey, while you're here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. In the meantime, though, thank you so much for watching. I have, of course, been Adam Cleary, a man who is a perennial mid-carder, I guess. What am I? Like the walking European champion. I'll see you soon. Bye.